fluctuate through the wind and the rain and everything else. It gives me great pleasure to welcome our esteemed speaker, Dr. Eva Hartell, all the way from Sweden here to be with us today. She's an expert in STEM education and she's got an assessment, so she's going to talk about that in particular today. So the talk is being live streamed. You can tweet about it, please do. I'd like to thank the National Forum for the Enhancement of Teaching, Learning, and Higher Education for helping fund today's event. We're going to distribute a short online survey to you afterwards, about 3 or 4 questions, just to get your feedback on it. So we'll be in touch with you about that via email. And thank you very much, and I'll hand over to Eva.
Thank you, Ewan. Thank you all for coming, and thank you so much, Ewan, for inviting me to DCU. It's a great pleasure, and I'm very honored to be here. I'm Eva Hartell. I'm a researcher in Haninge municipality. It's a municipality of 80,000 people, 20 minutes just south of Stockholm. And I'm also a researcher at KTH Royal Institute of Technology, which is in Stockholm. And I'm here to present some examples of where comparative judgment has been used. And I will focus it on for formative purposes. How many of you have ever heard about comparative judgment? Not that many. If I were to give this talk in Sweden, about the same amount of people will have raised their hands. It's not that well known actually, but the buzz is getting there. It's a growing body of research and across the world, especially in the UK. And there's a Belgian group, a DPAC group, who's done lots of studies, a group at Purdue, and actually a group here in Ireland at the University of Limerick and at London. And I will give you some examples. And my examples are collected from STEM education, because that's the area that I am most familiar with, but it has been done in other subjects, and especially in higher education. And I can direct you to literature after the class. So, my research and my greatest interest has always been in the classroom. The meeting between teachers and their pupils, the meeting between pupils, and the pupils herself. Bridging teaching and learning. That's all and I'm involved in a couple of different projects, but it's all emphasized bridging teaching and learning. People might call it formative assessment. And it ranges from programming with kids who have reading disabilities to invest in unpacking teachers' assessment practices. So this is quite and fortunately, I'm also involved in a pretty nice and cool project, I would say, called ATM, Assessment of Transsocial Skills, which is hosted here at DCU by Eamon. And it's across 8 countries and 12 partners all across Europe. And I can see that you're very excited and interested in learn more about digital technology, STEM education, and working collaborative. I would suggest that you will follow this project. We just started and we continue for 3 years. So, just to frame this study, I have these 2 quotes. Not the study, to frame this presentation. There is a quote by Professor Lars Lindström, who's a Swedish professor, who has written a lot in English. I can really recommend his work. And he points out how assessment is key. And I assume that you all have teaching experience. Might come as a surprise to you that your students doesn't learn everything they do. And sometimes teaching might even impair the progress. So you have to be there and check. And also, Dylan William is one of my favorite researchers. He said every teacher needs to improve. Not because they're not good enough, but because they can get even better. That's what I love about teaching, the challenge. You can always become better. You do great stuff, I'm sure, but you can always become even better. And formative assessment, we could go on for ages, for weeks and months, just to talk about formative assessment. And there are different definitions and different, literature, different researchers, but actually it's kind of simple. to based on these two assumptions that pupils don't learn everything we're taught, and good teachers often learn learners are. Sounds easy, it's not as easy as it sounds. On the other hand, you have to use the evidence that you elicit. You can elicit lots of evidence, but if you don't use it to adapt what happens next, don't bother collecting it. So you have to use evidence to adapt what happens next to better meet the understanding. This is generic, across different subjects, different age levels, and whatever. But it also it's about feedback that you perhaps provide to your students, or a peer, a friend, provide to another student, or feedback that the students provide for herself, perhaps. But it's also the feedback, that's one leg, that's it. And the other leg, which is quite often forgotten, is the feedback that you receive from your pupils, from your students, on your teaching. So you need to have feedback on your teaching, because otherwise you can't use that evidence to that what happens next. And to make it really steady, you need the third one, the subject or domain specific. I know someone was in programming here, or nursing, or STEM education. It differs. It's quite different between teaching nursing students and STEM education students, perhaps. And definitely, like in history, and in mathematics, it differs. And you are experts in your fields. So for the next, now I will go more into depth about comparative judgment, and I will suggest examples for you. But I can't tell you what you should do or you should not do, because you are the experts in your field. But as a Swede, I mean, I have to talk about the weather. But if you ever find a Swede who doesn't talk about the weather, that's something strange. And apparently, you also seem to talk quite a lot about the weather. And this storm, was it a Lorenzo? Whoever came up with that thing? But a storm, really? Compared to bad weather at home, this is nothing, I would say. And it's a bit cold, I could say. Do you think it's cold outside? Okay. It's okay. That's what you're used to, perhaps. This is not cold, to my experience, I would say. But I think, actually, it's quite warm inside this room. It's not the warmest room I've ever been to. I mean, we have a sauna at home, so it's kind of warm. But do you think it's warmer inside here than outside?
Not this room.
Not in this room.
Sorry, that's why I heard like that.
Yeah? What about you, Alice?
It's warm.
It's warmer, thank you. I prepared. No, sorry. So how much warmer? We could measure it. We could use a thermometer, but then we need a scale. And as a Swede, I would prefer Celsius scale, because I'm just Celsius, not a Swede. But there's Fahrenheit, there's Kelvin, whatever. But we could measure it. And we could reach some sort of agreement even on the absolute difference between outside and inside. But do we have to? No, maybe not. It depends. It depends on what we use that data for. On the other hand, I'm not here to just talk about the weather. I'm here to talk about the education, development, instruction. And here's a picture of, I've stolen this picture from an art teacher in Haninge. And she posted this on one of her walls in her classroom to explicate criteria for success. And as you can see, this one is perhaps a bit slightly better than that one. And you can easily see that. And you can talk about it and all this. I can also use the criteria. We have a criteria-based system in Sweden. And I can assure you these are very hard to understand and to interpret, even though it's stated in writing, but it's really hard to understand. But when I see these pictures, I can actually see the difference in quality. When I read this, and I've read them lots of times, I don't understand, actually. But I had a seminar on formative assessment in one of our schools, And all of a sudden, it appeared that there were two art teachers in that classroom, in that school. That's very unusual. And we had a talk, and we said, "Oh, this one is much better and much more pretty, and I would love that. It's not my one." And then this guy, I could see that he was a bit uncomfortable. And Swedes are very diplomatic. We try to always be in agreement. But then all of a sudden, this guy raises his hand. I disagree. And then I was like, what should happen now? But then he started to, so what do you disagree upon? Well, he thought this one was much better than that one. And then he started to talk in an art teacher language and try to describe it because he was more into modern art. That was his personal preferences. And he wanted his pupils at that school to be more into modern art. And then the discussion broke out. I really wish I could have recorded this discussion because it was such a nice, and they got really to try to elaborate on their arguments. And it was the first time they ever discussed quality in student work. The first time. And they had worked at the same school actually. But of course we reached some sort of agreement. It depends on what you're looking for. If it's an area of modern art, well, perhaps this is more highly rated art. And if it's more like Renaissance or Romantic, I don't know the actual word in English here, but well, you have to be upfront with your student. What are we looking for? What are we practicing on now? Tell your students that in advance. Like we did a good set, we said it's better to know what to look for before you start looking for it. Very clever, isn't it? I think so. Anyway, this is I worked as a teacher for more than 10 years, and sometimes I ended up with this pile of student portfolios. I've been a teacher for 20 years. Anyway, and in the end of a period, I had this, and I actually wasn't always sure what I was going to do with it. But for some reason, I could arrange them in piles. Like this is the good pile, and this is the above the limit, and this is the serious consideration pile. Fortunately, this pile was not as large as that was. I had to look into what can I do to make these students learn more. And I've spoken to quite a few teachers. They can actually arrange this, and they compare with their own personal experience, and hopefully compare to the curriculum and the criteria. But they can do this. But it's really hard to say out loud what it is that you're feeling. This is criteria for success. But what can I can show you, but it's difficult to tell you about. Which is a bit awkward when you have rubrics. It's really hard to, in writing, express quality work. You can practice. So, comparative judgment, which I'm trying to zoom into now. Comparative judgment relies on pairwise comparison. Is it warm inside and outside? Or this student work compared to this one? I don't have to say how much better, but you just have to. Then you compare. This one is better than that one. I don't have to say it's 90% better or 1.2 or whatever. Just this one is better. And then you are presented with another pair, another pair, another pair, another pair. And it relies on pairwise comparison. And this is from a welding school in Japan that I visited. I don't know much Japanese, but I sort of know a little bit about welding. And I could see I understood what they were talking about. I did not understand what they actually said, but they compared. This one is better than that one. And he tried to tell his students why this was better and what he could do, or he or she could do to make this one better. Because he was the expert, the teacher's expertise. You could show this in these examples. And you can also use this, it could be written essay. Quite a lot of studies have been conducted in scoring writing, English writing. And you can imagine all those portfolios like I've used. can have, these are portfolios that the students have gathered themselves. It's video recordings, writings, photos of the process, of the design process. And what it looks like, this is just a photo of illustration. All these are student work, essays, portfolios, sculptures, whatever. And we compare these. Half of them will win. It's like a Swiss tournament. And then half of them will win, and then half and half. And what emerges here is sort of this one has won most times. And this is what it looks in the software. I know at least 3 different softwares, but this is what it looks like in one I use. And what emerges here refines the ranking like this. And as you can see, each of these bars is a student work. And for every round, this bar shrinks. And it turns out like this. It's a rank order, and this, as a Swede, this is very controversial. We don't rank students. That's like the no-no. But this is not what actually we're not ranking students here either. It's their work that's been ranked for this particular purpose, this particular study. And judges can be teachers, they could be students, could even be young pupils. They have mostly been used by teachers. And it's not a rank where you can press here and you can see, depending on the software, and you can press somewhere and you can see that. And we can press, and we can see, and those of you who are into so-called technical drawings like this, know that there's some issues here. This is not the standard way to do it, and we can talk about this. And perhaps we can press here and compare what they look like. So it's not just a rank order. But there are these rank orders can be quite useful as well to unpack the assessment practices and the teaching and learning within the classrooms even. This is from the study, 100 students, 2 teachers who taught these for 2 year 9s and 2 year 7s. Made exactly the same design task, and we gather them into this cloud, and then teachers, or 10 teachers, compare and set, and we end up with this ranking. And what could we see? Well, we thought that the 9th graders would outperform the 7th graders, and they did, but not. There were some 7th graders who made it to the top. You see here, and in the bottom there were lots of 9th graders as well. We could also see, you see this a line green here, and we have 2 genders, boys and girls, to make it so simple. Boys and girls, and I colored one of them. And this is an engineering and technology task. Do you think I colored boys or girls with green?
Girls.
Girls. Yeah, girls. And I don't mind girls outperforming the boys. But it's a matter of discussion when it is like this. How can we challenge the boys even more to be even more successful? So this is just one simple thought, but if we look into grading, we have an issue, at least in Sweden, the boys being outperformed by girls. We need to talk about this at least, and it can be shown here. One way, yeah. Please.
In terms of the comparison, is it like Swiss that you only compare to a sample, or are you comparing to
Everyone, all the archives. You can use different algorithms and make it faster as well. Depends on which software. But I'm not here to promote any software.
They show the boys side by side.
Pardon?
So the green is girls.
Oh, girls, yes. So they're not that many boys.
The white is the boys.
The whites are the boys.
So the number of girls is higher than number of boys.
In the top 30, yes.
Okay.
Oh, this is the top 30.
Yes, this is it. Yes,
Ah,
100.
right.
Sorry, I
But the classroom.
100 students like this. That's what took the top 30 because the screen was that way. But
Also, some of those people are there out of 100.
Yes.
Right.
So we have something to talk about here, don't we? And I can assure you, the teachers who taught these kids, we had great discussions afterwards. How can we challenge the year 7? How can we challenge the boys? How can we make the girls prosper even more? So there's lots of we can unpack.
And it's one white space, one boy.
One boy, one boy,
Only
one boy.
7 in the top 30.
So there's something we need to talk about here. But again, this is just one task they did in a very limited period of time. So we can, at least we can, and perhaps you can do something similar on depends on what you do. Not for accountability, obviously, but for have something to talk about with your colleagues. And here's the school. It was 10 schools, 250 students. It was in chemistry education, laboratory work, some theoretical as well, mostly focus on food chemistry. 10 schools, 250 students, 10 teachers. The schools were from different areas also in Stockholm, some like rich, posh areas, and some more socially challenged areas. And we did the same task, and together, and then the 10 teachers compared that, and we got this ranking for this only for this task. And when we were presenting this to the 10 teachers that was involved in the project, we were a bit hesitant to show them because ranking, that's very personal and can be interpreted in the wrong way. And we were very strict that it was not from accountability or anything. And the school had a purple, it was only that teacher who knew which color she had. And the yellow was only the teacher who knew. Each teacher knew which color they were. And we showed them this, and then one of the teachers said, "Oh, I didn't know my students were that well, that good." She had never had the experience of comparing her students' performance to another school, not even to another class. And I know that we have different assessment practices in Ireland and in Sweden, but in Sweden it's the one teacher who assess students for grading. We have national tests only for moderation, but it's the one teacher. We have no external examinations that I understand we have here. Yes, please.
Don't we have to be a little bit careful with ranking because they don't tell us anything about the distribution of quality? You know, I mean, everyone in that top 30 could be performing at the top percentile of ability.
Yeah.
You know, so I think the ranking, obviously, it can simulate discussion and everything, but I think you have to be very careful.
You have to be very, very careful. And all of these can be below pass also.
Yeah.
Or everyone could be on an A level.
Is there any impact from socioeconomic?
Well, the
Did
teacher
the richer schools
who
perform higher?
fine.
Did the wealthier schools perform higher?
And when we look into the grading results, yes. In the statistics that our national agency collects.
And yours?
And here, it was one of the teachers who herself said, "Oh, I didn't know my students performed that well." And there's another discussion we could go into, perhaps not now, but it's the one teacher who decided. And they thought that this was a good thing because then it was a professional consensus. They had opportunities to discuss with others. They had opportunities to do this together. But going back to your question, this is not criteria. This has nothing to do with the grading actually, because this was just one task. But we have something to talk about. And I can assure you that the teacher who saw that her students outperform schools in posh areas, she felt really, really pleased. Anyway, just ranking. And I mean, this is interesting, but there are more interesting things. And I will give you some more examples. And the summative, I will not talk too much about. But here's assessment, teacher training, moderation, and such. We touch upon moderation already, but and I'll try to give examples to all of the 5 key strategies for formative assessment. Badina William and Shimon Lee. And I'll go through the examples one by one. But again, use the evidence. Unless you use the evidence, it's not working for you. And first, clarifying, sharing the understanding learning intentions and transmitters. One example is this, and this is from a primary school, 11-year-olds. Did a design class, global strength. And they were working collaboratively, like under regular circumstances. They were allowed to talk to each other, and they were allowed to interact. But each student collected their own evidence of learning using an iPad, which was in a cloud-based portfolio. And this is what they looked like, and also they ended up with a product. And looking at the products, this was in technology and engineering education in Hartell, Sweden. And this one, the taco robot, it's not so fancy or so nice perhaps, but we have a story, we have a narrative as well. So we have a product and the process. We could see, and I mean, this one is very pretty, but maybe it's just a pretty robot. But we need to find out more about what the students' thoughts and such. We had collected them 25 portfolios, and then we gathered 5 teachers who were all educated in these subjects, and there were also experienced teachers in these subjects, in all the STEM studies. And we had them doing comparative judgment, and we knew that we would get a very high reliability on that ranking order, 190, always like that. But we also wanted to know what they were looking at. So we asked them to say, I chose this one because of, or I chose this one because of. And then we recorded this in MP3 and we transcribed and analyzed. And we could see that they were looking at the narrative, which isn't that surprising perhaps because it was a design task, but we didn't know that. And sometimes they looked at one particular detail, but not that much. You wanted to see the whole story. So and you can read it, the whole paper. And we gathered them in a library because we wanted to talk to them before and after, but it could have been all across the world actually, because you do this online. Here's another group. I've stolen this one from the University of Limerick. They had 12 teachers in business studies, something, economics, and they gathered these teachers to come up with a task together that they could do with their students. They also wrote down some criteria, and they were all in agreement that all the criteria were equally important. I think it was 6 criteria. And then the students did the task, writing a business letter or complaint. And then they uploaded it in the system and they compared the judgment and ended up with this ranking, which is 0.982. I don't see the relevance of having 3 decimals here, but we can see it's high. And here, and every number here is a student, but here something happens. But whoops, the big like this. So what happens? Well, they looked into this, the teachers, and then they saw that the 20 and above had reached all the 6 criteria. There was one criteria that these had not met. And what was that? Maybe that was more important. And then they started to discuss and talk about this. And there were an agreement beforehand that all of them were equally important. But here's another, we opened like a box of possible topics for discussion. And why is it important to communicate criteria for success and learning intentions? I assume that you have to do it with your students, but why? Because the school principal said so, or some professor said it's important. Benefits low achievers, all students, reduce my workload. What do you say? You can just point your fingers. A, B, C, D. What do you say? perhaps all of these are important. From literature, it's, for instance, Anders Jönsson. A, benefits low achievers, benefits all the students, but if you have like a range of achievers like this, and it mainly benefits the low achievers. And reduces my workload. Several of you said so, and that's my experience from working a lot with formative assessment in farming in schools. The teacher said it reduces my workload. And I guess students know what they are supposed to be doing. Anyway, there are different ways to communicate learning intentions and criteria for success. Here's another study that I have example from University of Limerick, her group. And they had teacher students to design a bird feeder to somewhat measure intelligence. I don't remember the details. And they did a task, and in the end, they did comparative judgment and provided peer feedback to each other. And then they interviewed the students afterwards. So, what did you think about this? And the students said, "Oh, I finally got an understanding of what criteria for success looks like." And the peer feedback I got from, also from giving feedback to my peers, but also the feedback I got from my fellow students was much more useful than they were used to. They work a lot with peer assessment, but it's about relationship also, because maybe I'm not so honest with you when I'm sitting beside you, looking you in the eye. But when you do this online, and also only have to say this one is better because of, perhaps you can do this, or instead of have to take 100 or so criteria. I don't know. The students said also, now I finally know what next step to take. Unfortunately, the first round, the students were not allowed to take the next step because it was in the end of the course, so the next course. So they did it again, and then they had a period of time, and then they did comparative judgment with peer assessment, with peer feedback, and then the students were allowed to use that peer feedback and feed that into their own work, and then in the end of the course, it was much more successful. And then they could see also that the students who were in the lower, I would not say lower achievers, but in the lower end, they took the largest step forward. The ones who were already in the top, they sort of stayed there. Could be a ceiling effect because of the task, or they just relaxed and said, "Well, I'm not going to do it well." Very important is that the students are not avoiding the grades. That's the teacher's job, but they peer assess, collaborate. They get the smell and the taste of others' work, and they also are forced to provide feedback. This has been done at Purdue University, also in higher education. I only got this a week ago, actually. There's so much literature popping up now. It's really nice. Anyway, middle school students and also college students. Sort of the same study, but in different contexts. Also a design task, and they did peer assessment through comparative judgment, providing feedback to each other in the middle, and then we could use the feedback again. But they did it quite elegantly because they wanted to compare different methods. So half of the group did comparative judgment with the peer assessment and peer feedback. Half of the group did in a traditional way, providing feedback, peer feedback. And guess what? The students who did this, and then they started to they continued to work, and in the end, they compared the judgment. Others, or the assessors did comparative judgment, and then they could see the students who had experience around comparative judgment in the middle and provided peer feedback to each other. They outperformed others who did peer feedback in a traditional way. I don't know how to explain this, but I think it's very interesting to see what was the mechanisms behind this. How can we unpack this even more?
So how long did this process take with the students? So I would use peer an hour and a half. How long does the comparative feedback take?
I don't remember the exact time for this, but when I did, because I didn't prepare for that question, but it's in the paper. But just to give you an example, that when they had the 5 teachers who peer assessed the portfolios together, it was 1 hour. So it was less than what they usually spend. And there has been done some experiments comparing traditional marking and fill out the rubric, the comparative judgment. Some results show that this is much faster. Some say this is much faster.
So what would you
I would
describe in a little bit more detail what the comparative element in the college students were? I don't quite grasp what they did.
Yeah. They did a design task.
Yeah.
And halfway through the course, they were peer assessing each other's portfolios.
So just 2 people, one judging one other person?
Yes, and in an iterative process. So they got to see all, I guess they got to see all of their peers' portfolios. So it's a broad range.
Yeah.
So that, I think that might be one of the mechanisms probably that we are exposed to different varieties, and quite a few. And it takes such a short time to do this. Whereas in a more traditional way, maybe you work in pairs of groups of 4, and you just share among the table. Yeah. The links, I will provide you with the links so that you can read the details. And I can, Purdue, Scott Bartholomew, and Greg Strimov, they have done so many really nice studies. And it's hard to keep pace with them, actually. So I'll touch upon key strategy 1, 2, providing feedback, and also activating students as learning resources. When you provide feedback to someone else, that's a really good example of activating students as learning resources. And as owners of their own learning, because they can compare their own work. And the final example is an international study that I've done with Greg, Scott, and Emily at Purdue University. And I think it's pretty cool. And we were all in STEM education, and particularly the T and the E. And we have gone to different conferences, and we all talk about formative E's, and it is one thing. It's not, but we wanted to know more about this. So looking to documents and such, but we wanted to, because in the assessment, that's when you actually find the most important part of the teacher's practice. It's in the assessment app that anyway, I'll try to talk about that later. We looked into the documents. Documents is fine. We compare different curriculums and such. But documents are documents. What happens in the classroom doesn't necessarily correspond to what the documents are. But open it up. Different with America, Sweden, and the UK. Actually, some Irish people were also involved. And we have different, for instance, technology is a mandatory subject all across the education system in Sweden. And which is not the case in America. But what combines here, what we have in common is the open and the design scenario. We all do sort of that. In Sweden, we have natural sciences, but also the social sciences within our subjects. We also have different assessment practices. In Sweden, it is the teacher who decides on how he or she wants to design the learning activities within her classroom, and also what assessment activities she wants to include, and also it's actually the teacher who awards the final grade. So it's a big deal, actually. And also in America, you have to divide the process with the product. You assess the process and award the grade, and then you could assess the product, which the UK people did found it like, really? How can you separate the process from the product? They're more emphasizing the process, the rules, and they don't care too much about the implementation. It was very interesting. And we had 760 students, teenagers, did a design task to design a pill dispenser, just an example. And they worked in groups, 175 portfolios, 175 products they produced. And we had teachers and educational researchers, teacher educators from these 3 countries. And they assessed through comparative judgment, portfolios and products separately within these 3 groups. And we trained them, thanks to technology, because Scott was in America, but he trained the teachers here in Sweden. And again, the products and the portfolios separately. And in an iterative process. So they got to see the 175 products and portfolios like this. Took them about two hours. I can show the activity. And it ended up with 3 rank orders. Actually 6, because we had products and portfolios separately. So here are the American group, and the UK and the Sweden. They're not that, well, they're similar, but there are some differences. Which is, I find fascinating. What is this? And can we look into more, like group 122? For some reason, they were most successful. So what does 122, what does their work look like? Well, like this. So what's so fancy about this one then? What is it? Well, we have the qualitative data also. This was the winner, you could say, but we have the qualitative data. Why did they choose this one or before that one? This one is better than that one, and they wrote comments this time. And here it is. This is the top ranked prototype from Sweden. It's a pill dispenser for traveling elderly people. Looks like this. Doesn't say much, does it? But we also have the portfolios to compare them. And here we have the comments from the assessors, the judges, who are teachers, teacher educators, and educational research. It's small, simple. In a very superficial interpretation, I would say less is more, is what we emphasize. Less is more. Very, confirmation bias in terms of Scandinavian design, which is well known for its best.
IKEA.
Yes, for instance. Whereas the American looked like this. This was the top one in America. And they also have usability design all the time. But then we have the comments to enrich the data. And they use like, we would never say that. And again, confirmation bias here, and also this sort of like more Chinese labeling stuff. And now this is a very superficial presentation in terms of the analysis we did, and you can see it, but it's such a nice way to unpack. And maybe we could have interviewed them, and so, even, what do you think is a good work? What is criteria for success in your subject? And then we could just talk. And then he said, when you interview people tend to respond the way they think you want them to respond sometimes. Or we could have a survey, a questionnaire, or someone said, well, it's stated in the Swedish national curriculum, that's what I said. Well, hopefully, yes. But again, we need to, I really find it interesting to unpack it even more. So comparative judgment, this is from the international study, can be useful for international comparison. Especially when it's like open-ended. And this is the science market. Can serve as a useful tool to unpack teachers' assessment practices and dig deeper than documents. Very much. And to find out and explicit criteria for success. And serve as a catalyst for discussion. That's the strongest, my strongest belief in that's why I really like comparative judgment. It's a really good tool that serves as a catalyst for discussion. regarding gender issues or criteria for success and everything. And we have, of course, we're not done with it, and we want to have, there are lots of ideas for future work, and maybe expand international collaborations or do tasks in different subjects in higher ed or in primary or whatever, different grade levels, and do construct clarity and explore more. What can we use it for? For formative purpose. There has been some critique to comparative judgment, which is good because that is the sign of maturity for an area, a research area, that there are actually critiques. And there's a growing body of critique, positive and negative. Mostly the critique that I have found is based on the reliability figures, 0.88 or 0.92 or such things like that. But I find it more interesting for the qualitative. And I always try to just because I think it's very interesting. It has the most important person in a research when you do practice-based research is the teacher. And what did they think? Well, they were very positive. Teachers are often very positive when you do things. But what they emphasized was that the power of the collective. They were not alone. And also nice to see other than my own student work. You get the range of, got the opportunity to see other professionals and what their students were able to do. And again, to stimulate dialogue and to do comparative judgment, you don't need any software at all. I actually use it when I buy shoes for my son, because sometimes he wants lots of different pairs of shoes. So I present him which one, this one and that one, okay? This one and that one. Then we end up hopefully with just one pair. My uncle is a wine connoisseur. He uses this he doesn't know it's comparative judgment, but what he does when he selects a wine, when he travels across France and collect wine, he compares different wines. Like this. He sips, I'm not sure if he spits, but he sips and compare two at a time. There's a Japanese from Japan. He didn't even know he was doing comparative judgment either, but he had it in electronics. It was an sort of open-ended task in electronics, and it can look different. You can solve it in different ways, and he showed the students how. And going back to wine and wine connoisseurs, I think this is something that I would like to do, and to connoisseurs of STEM, to assess assessment literacy, but also the self-efficacy, to dare to and think that you actually can do something. But in order to do that, we need to grow our professionalism, and we can do that together, and we need something to talk about. And I think comparative judgment could be one tool for this, and use ICT as a servant instead of a driver. Open technology pushes things into the classroom and provides solutions for problems that we didn't even know we had. But here we can actually use software or ICT to grow our professional business. I think this is what I would like to do. And here you're exposed to a range of, going back to your question, you're exposed to different range of essays, I don't know what kind of work that your students hand in, but you are exposed to a range, and the students can be exposed to a range of quality. Especially if you're working with criteria-based, and you don't have a normal distribution of the grade, this will be very useful. And we can, instead of one, we could smell it and track and so, to wrap this up, just a summary, I think, depending on how you design the task, of course, the students can be the one who collects the data. And when students collect the evidence of learning, it also, I think, is just increases the validity, especially in design tasks. They can take a photo from that point of view instead of that point of view. Might easily put the burden of documentation and decision-driven data collection. You have to think really hard before you do this. What should the design of the task look like? Think ahead. What sort of evidence do we need in order to take what decision? I don't think we can cover all the options here, but I think hard in advance is good. And also inviting other professionals to your classrooms. We have too much trouble. That was what the teacher said in the interviews. But what's in it for you? I don't know. I don't know much about the Irish educational system, and I definitely don't know much about teaching nursing and such a program, but you have to think for yourself, what can this be useful? How can it be useful? Maybe I could give it a try within this limited area, just to try. And there is a growing body of literature, especially, I would say, in English writing or in writing, academic writing, in the Belgian group and this group. And there's a growing body also in this finally, all of you have some sort of teaching experience, and some of you might even be fortunate to still be teaching students. This is always my key message, that teachers make a difference. And going back to Dylan Williams' quote, that teachers need to improve not just because they're not good enough, but because we can get even better. And I think we need to collaborate and talk to each other and together somehow. And I would not have been able to do this presentation without the support of my colleagues at Purdue, at PGH, and at the University of Cambridge. And especially not without the teachers and the pupils who has been involved in the project. So thank you for that. And thank you so much for coming. And thank you for listening.
Thank you, Eva, for a really wonderful and stimulating talk. I think that's the first time for me personally anyway. I have a lot of takeaways from your presentation, but one was I think it was lovely that you acknowledged students. You acknowledged them at the end. That's very nice. Not seen that before. It's really, really nice. Really to do. I was looking at a thesis this year, a taught master's thesis, and one of the supervisors had given the thesis a 78, and a second marker committee gave the same thesis a 50. So this is a big problem. So we were bringing in a third marker at this stage. The difference between a 50 and a 78, something quite different there. But the external examiner had a look at it. We brought a lot of eyes onto it. And the external examiner looked at it, and he is like your uncle. He intuitively was doing some of this thing because he said, well, look at this one here, and the criticality that this student is using in the discussion section here compared to this one, it's clear. And it's hard to give this in the abstract, as where you should have, if you just have a rubric, it's very abstract. And it's really, I think it's really powerful that you can compare work in this way and give people the example. Like the technical drawing example is great. And so my question for you and anyone else is, because I would love to try some of this perhaps with students in my own practice, but I guess a lot of what's coming through an assessment as well, culture's feedback. And the culture might not be there currently to say to one student, or can you share your assessment with another student, or have you any thoughts on getting permission or allowing students to share feedback, to share their work with each other for the purposes of learning?
I never thought about that actually. I don't know.
Maybe it's easier in school with kids.
Yeah. Depends on what the culture is. I mean, I guess you have some regulations regarding that here. but in terms of,
With this problem called GDPR.
but, but the software system is the first thing. That's one of the things you need to take when you decide which software you use. But one thing I would never do is to show the students their ranking order. Because, I mean, I don't think a student who is in the bottom feels better about herself when she just gets confirmation that she's compared to the others. But when she gets the opportunity to be exposed to different ways of solving the same problem, she will hopefully be more empowered or more options to do something about it. And also, maybe you can, it's not, they should not do the marking for the grade. I would never suggest that. That's your job. And also, it is just for one task, and you need to be very concerned on how you design the task. But and also, if the student doesn't want to be involved, maybe he or she shouldn't. I don't know. I mean, how much can you force someone to do something? On the other hand, when they see the benefits of seeing, if it's not, if they don't compete for grade, like not only 5 people can get an A or something, then it would be very problematic. But on the other hand, if they understand that they can help each other, and also there is a new thesis in English learning as second language, who proved that she didn't use comparative, but she looked into that when students provide feedback to another person, they grow their knowledge themselves. So maybe to inform students about the benefits. But you have to decide on what you want to do.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to not let the questions there because we first should have asked if there's more questions from the floor.
Just on that point, though, I have the students mark each other's work voluntarily, and 70% would turn up for the class when you explain the pros and cons of what they get. And when they mark each other's work, they have another week then to change their assignments to get them into mark. And I've never tracked how it changes because the students would mark it differently perhaps than I would. And then it gets awkward when they know they have to hand in a mark for me to see. So I've never done that, but that's 70% turn up for the class because they think it will help them. And I emphasize all the way through the modules the idea that if they are marking someone else's work for anything, discussion, that they gain from the process of marking. They seem very enthused by it.
And are the students okay with that? Because, like, in my experience, I saw a lot of students that are very difficult. They're like, oh, the other can say my opinion.
Yeah, so I emphasize there that we don't have a classification of marking of only 5 people will get the top marks. Yeah, I would emphasize to them that what I hope is that everyone will increase their grade by 10% under this, and that there is no negative side to telling someone else how to improve because you never take into account. And they seem to believe it. Yeah, a lot of it is about, I think, about building a relationship with the students on an ongoing basis, that assessments and feedback are very positive and never judgmental.
Are your students anonymous when they provide feedback?
No, they sit next to each other and say, you mark this, and I do think it comes down to relationships between the students, and they obviously pick someone who they feel would be positively critical, and maybe they've never checked if they pick the right person or not, or whether that makes a difference. But just going through the process of number 1, marking someone's work with a rubric that we go through, and number 2, getting the feedback. I think
they have to really think hard also too. What does it mean?
Yes, when you're it's harder to mark someone else's work than you know, to write it. And I think that part of it, they gain more from the feedback they get from the other person.
One of the studies that I referenced was that the students who did comparative judgment and provided feedback that way, the experience was, they were used to that. They said it was nice to be more anonymous, to be more critical, and they found that the feedback that they got was more useful. But that was in that study. Doesn't necessarily happen in work. I can just mention it has been used in other settings as well. This is perfume making. Comparative. I mean, oh, this is a 90% nice scent. Huh? Or no, this one is better than that one. Or also when people have handed in applications for a job. Or I would love to do an application for the funding sometime, but I haven't seen that study. But for applications for a job, people have used comparative judgment. In also in not just in academia but also in business.
Yeah, well, it's just to follow on, I guess. What you're talking about is probably the hardest of all the assessment for learning strategies, but it is the ultimate expression of integrating assessment, teaching, and learning. And it's fantastic to hear people talking about that, because we know I have a lot of research done in the last 4 or 5 years that says it is the strategy that is done least of all, because it's the hardest one. Sharing learning attention is a lot easier. You can stand up and say, here, this success criteria and so on, but just linking with that. And somebody pointed out to me one time that anybody who's taken a driving test understands this, that you can know the criteria for passing the driving test, but actually knowing the criteria is going to be of very little value to you if you haven't practiced on the criteria. And I think the comparative judgment piece is a really powerful way of practicing on the criteria. And what I mean by practicing on the criteria is that, you know, the way you described at the beginning about the criteria were on the board, but you didn't know what they meant. That's the idea, is that once you go into that comparative, and I've done a version of comparative judgment on story writing with young kids, and they can do it, but they need to be taught how to do it. It doesn't happen just, you know, it's not something that you just hand people things and they know immediately. It's building that sense of understanding what really, it's the nose for quality. You talk about the smell, it's the nose for quality. And one really powerful thing as well, to come back to your students, is that the likelihood is that the students who benefit most are the ones that you might be most concerned about, which are those students who are likely to fail their exams. The ones, because we know also that our highest achieving students, somewhere along the way, get that nose for quality. And our lower achieving students don't get it unless you really push them. And that's why, remember that multiple choice thing that said the lower achieving students, they benefit proportionately more simply because they get to practice on the criteria. So I think, like, I absolutely think in so many ways, I think as well in teacher education, you talk about, or in any kind of clinical setting where you're looking at somebody's performance, I mean, it is really powerful in terms of looking at two different performances and comparing it, and then fine-graining that down to a point where something that's really complex, you can be making reasonably good judgments about them over the process of trying to simplify it, compare this with this. And finally, I have a question, which is the one that's on your graph where you have the very low performance, very high performance on that kind of curve. Do you sometimes start with the very simple thing of comparing the lower one with the very higher one? Because that should be easy. And then working your way in until you get to the point in the middle where you're making very fine-grained distinctions between performance. So that's the piece that's difficult.
I have never done what you suggested when you already have the ranking. And then
Yeah, it's actually having the exam part. So you have you now have all the portfolios.
Yeah.
Now you use that material for teaching purposes.
They're developing like what do you call it, like a scale like this
Yes,
with planted exemplars.
exactly.
That's on the. I know that some people are trying to develop that now, and it's with primary writing, for instance.
Yeah.
But I've never done it. But the software you can use this fine graining. I mean, if you have to complete large range of like high achiever and low achiever, it's not that difficult.
It's
to,
not that
no.
difficult, yeah, yeah.
But the softwares, they could do this fine graining for you during the iterative process of comparative judgment. I don't know how it works technically, but what it does is if there is this portfolio or this work seems to has won all the time, this has not won once, and you don't have in for a couple of rounds, these two will not be compete to each other. Instead, this one has won and this one has won, and then you have to make the decision between this, and that's really hard. That's really hard. And I think that's again the ICT Hub can be a facilitator or a servant to do this, because if you only have it on here on the paper, you can divide between the high achiever or the low achiever, but in terms of the fine grain, it's really hard to find those exemplars without some sort of thing. And also, if you have a pass and a fail, if you only have that for pass and fail, where is the limit between pass and fail? And if the assessors, which is very open, I mean, your example with 50 or 78, we have the similar examples. We have national tests in Sweden, but it's only for moderation. Teachers who teach the students, they assess the national test. But then our school inspectors, they collect different national tests and have another recruited some assessors to do so. And what do they find? Well, they find that there is a disagreement between the assessors. Even though there are very strict regulations on how to assess these, and there are rubrics and there are lots of instructions, but still, there's a difference. And who is mostly affected by this? What is students? It's not, we need to somewhat balance. What if students, if the pass rate was 70, and your student who was assessed by one of the assessors was 50, well, fail. Maybe she will not get a job or pass her exams or whatever. Or she was lucky to have the one who scored 78. And it's just one person who decides. In my context, it could be just one person who decides that. What I like was to find some sort of areas for discussion where people can work together. And I think it would be, you don't necessarily get different ways to do it. I mean, like in Queensland moderation systems, but you need to find some sort of arenas for professionals to talk and work with it, because otherwise the students can be devastating.
Yeah. And do you have any strategy for how this will work with large class sizes?
What do you mean by large?
200.
Well, we did it with 250.
Okay. So, the logistics of that.
But you were in there?
Yes.
Yeah. What kind? Do you have essays?
Okay.
Like that. Let's assume you have it.
Like public external, let's say.
Yeah, and they hand in an essay.
Yeah.
And maybe you have in the instructions of the essay, you should include this.
Yeah.
And then you have a rubric.
Yeah.
But this is you could take, I have not prepared it, so just take it for what it is. Perhaps. They can hand in the essay.
Yeah.
And say there's 5 weeks. And the 4th week they hand in the essay. And then they compare it. This one is better. Oh, maybe you have missed this one. You forgot about the rubric, the quadrant in the that particular criteria. If you just add this or remove that or just change the order of in your text, perhaps another student will.
Let us stop you for a second. Just the whole logistics of that. Like
Oh,
you're
the
just
logistics.
comparing two, right? But I have 200.
No, but you compare it, you upload all the 200 essays.
So you need software.
You need
It cannot be that manually, because that's like, no.
You can do what it will take.
Okay, so you load up
I
the
would
software.
suggest you upload it in the software.
Yeah. And
And that's
then
it
what?
for you.
Then when you
Then
say,
you have an account for the student,
yeah,
so that you can log into and access these. And then the software provides you with pairs like this.
so the students get what? They get two
Two,
to
and then two,
Yeah.
and then two, and then two.
Yeah,
and then two.
but how many do they look at? Because that's, but, I mean, from your experience, what do you get back? Because if you say they look at two, then two, then two, then
Depends
two,
on-
it appears to me that it would take a long time for them to do that.
Yeah, especially if everyone should be paired with the same amount of others.
Yeah, so,
Depends on how many assessors. If you have 250 essays,
so are you asking what if the students were to do?
I just can't get my head around.
Yes,
Just
and
think
the
of a
idea-
high- of a large.
So if you're saying that, is it the student would go on and look at two assignments? Yeah, so in your experience with the students to get a value out of this process, how many pairs do they need to look at?
I'm sorry, I can't answer that. Depends on what they put like.
If it's an assignment, a 3,000 word assignment, that would be
Well,
traditional.
that's
in
another
university.
issue. If it's too long, it will take much longer. If it is an essay, then because then you have to read.
Yes,
I can't answer that, but what I found in when they use portfolios, after a while, the assessors didn't care about some of the subtasks. Only looked at some of the more important. But if you have 250 students, I guess there is, I suggest that you talk to someone who knows more about the details, depending on which of the software. But if you want to do it without the software, perhaps you can divide them into groups of 20, perhaps, and then just copy, everyone brings 5 copies, and then you just blend it in here, and then they just take 2. But the problem is maybe it's mathematics point is because you need to, if everyone should meet, be compared as many times as the others, you need to make sure that all the essays are compared
The same.
Yeah. But again, you can just by letting your students be exposed to the others only for formative purposes, like you very nicely explained. I think for the logistics would be better if you divide them in study groups.
Yeah.
Because up to 250, and especially if they after work, that means it takes a long time.
Oh dear.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And please contact me and I can send you some more details.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.